So this is just some drawing sketch paper. I was trying to decide if I want to do charcoal or graphite today. I've been like super into charcoal lately. I don't know. What do you guys think I should use? Does anyone have a preference? I mean, if you want me to draw in graphite because that's what you're doing, like I totally can, so I can give tips for that.
Jennifer, before that decision's made, did you show already? I switched screens for a second. Did you show what you're actually drawing?
Just my hand.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, then it's open.
Mm-hmm.
I thought if you had a specific model, then it's easier for me to make a decision on which medium.
There you
go. There you go.
But yeah, I mean, charcoal is fun because it's fun, loose, expressive, erases really well, blendable. But you know, what are you guys working in? Is everyone else going graphite?
Graphite.
Okay, I'm gonna draw graphite too then. I'm gonna stick with you guys today. I think that's good. So I am gonna give myself a little frame, a little boundary, just because I've been liking that lately, just to kind of frame my composition. I think it looks nice. So as for the size, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna go 8 across. Well, let's see. Just kind of making it up what seems good. Go by 6. We'll go 8 by 6. It's like sometimes I sketch without, sometimes it's nice to have it though. Now I do have like the graphite sticks. You can always lay a ground out first, but you don't have to. You definitely don't have to. And again, the purpose of laying out a ground would be just to start with a middle value. So then you can erase for your highlights and then darken for your shadows. But like I said, you definitely don't need to use that. So for drawing your hand, you know, I think it's, you know, picking a position that you think is interesting and then just kind of setting it up. Oh, we'll let Nora in a minute. Just kind of setting it up in a, you know, position that would work well. I wish I could kind of zoom out. It'd be nice to, there we go. That might work. Kind of show my hand and my drawing. Of course, my viewpoint's a little bit different than what you're seeing, but that can still work. Hey, Nora.
Hi, sorry I'm a little late.
No worries. Welcome. The theme is hands or hand. It could be singular hand.
All right.
So yeah, I'm just kind of deciding, I don't know what position I want to draw in. Something kind of folded or curved I think is sort of interesting more than like a flat palm, but you know, whatever you want. So I try to focus when I'm initially drawing something like a hand is we're focusing on the lines and then the shapes that they create. Eventually we'll get to value where we're looking at, you know, the lights and the darks, but I just try to focus on the outside edges first, but then also helping you inform and kind of look at your edges. Sometimes it's helpful to just focus on your background, because that will help you kind of see the edge as well. And as far as like details, you know, like wrinkles in your hand and texture on your skin, you know, I don't really draw a ton of that at first. Maybe some of the more like defined wrinkles or prominent ones that are really sticking out, I might sort of pencil in. But other than that, I kind of come back to that detailing later. So I think kind of a looser sense, and then you know, we'll kind of put all the details together in at the end. So I'm just going to pick kind of a starting point. I like to start with kind of a loose gesture drawing, which is designed to be kind of like a loose, quick sketch, just observing as you're drawing. I tend to maybe draw them a little bit slower than, you know, actual gesture drawing, but, you know, that's okay. We go at our own pace here. I think it's just nice to get just a loose And I'm just using a 2H pencil, nice and light. In fact, I don't know, maybe a little tricky to see. I might switch to an HB just so you guys can see this a little bit better. But still nice and light so I can erase. I'm not like pressing down and indenting the paper. And, you know, sometimes like when I'm drawing, I don't necessarily decide like how realistic I want it to be or like the exact style. Sometimes like as you're drawing, the drawing will sort of inform itself and you'll kind of decide how you want to finish it or add shading. If you want it to be like really smooth and polished with your shading, or if you want it to be like a loose sketch, or perhaps you want to end up outlining it and making it sort of a more cartoony stylized version. So there's lots of options for finishing a drawing too after you get that initial sketch in. So again, I'm not worrying about everything being super duper perfect at this point. I'm just wanting to get kind of the loose, again, outline and placement proportion of where everything is going. And I'm just looking at my hand often. That's important to note. You want to spend a lot of time looking at what you're drawing. Remember, drawing is all about seeing and observing. And you can do little things too, like giving yourself, you know, measurements. Like, I don't know, maybe use like your fingernail, for example, as a unit of measurement to kind of help you with proportions if you're, you know, striving for something to be super accurate. And then, of course, you know, there's the whole foreshortening aspect of when your fingers are coming toward you. So what you'll kind of notice there is the lines sort of, as they're going back in space, start to converge and get smaller. And then coming toward you, they're starting to open up a little bit and they're getting wider. So sometimes that can help when you're drawing. Sometimes those foreshortening situations can be a little tricky. But again, you know, I'm not too worried about precise details at this point. I'm just doing a loose gesture drawing. And, you know, don't be afraid to erase. You know, sometimes if I'm drawing light enough, I'm drawing a little bit darker now, so it's showing up. But if I'm drawing light enough, sometimes I'll just like kind of sketch over top of my mistake. Or sometimes what's helpful is correcting the mistake and then erasing the old line. That kind of helps you, prevents you from drawing over that same line again and again if you've ever had that happen.
Mhm.
And hopefully you have, because I certainly still do. Yeah, that could be just a helpful thing. So yeah, don't be afraid to erase, don't be afraid to sketch over top. Now look at those angles and just try not to focus too much on the details just yet, which, you know, sometimes it's helpful to maybe squint just a little bit, blur out those details. I've actually heard too of people taking reference photos and then slightly blurring them a little bit, you know, in maybe Photoshop or another program, because it just eliminates you seeing those details, because sometimes that's a little bit frustrating. Our brain wants to focus on them sometimes. But you can get to those details, but it's best to not start with them.
I find it hard not to.
I know. We want to.
Yeah.
We totally want to. Like, I struggle with it sometimes too, for sure. Like, it was something I had to work towards.
I see.
So yeah, if you find yourself doing that, know that that's totally normal. But your brain is just wanting to do that. Yeah, so squinting is one thing that helps me for sure with trying to ignore some of those details in the beginning and just focusing on the basic shapes and lines. And you know, there are plenty of artists that like to begin with, let's say they're drawing a portrait, they'll start with the eye and sit there and like render the entire eye and then continue on. And I mean, definitely they've worked on honing that skill. But some people like to work like part to whole like that, but I kind of like to, I don't know, work a little bit looser and see like my entire composition start to come together, and then I can make adjustments. And that's just how I work. But you know, I think every person and every artist is different. So
Yes.
you know, the beauty of diversity, right? And all our differences. And so, you know, too, if like any of you guys are finding that you've got some good tips or things that work well for you as you're drawing, you know, feel free to share. It's like a lot of teaching art stems from, you know, my experiences and what I've learned and what I've discovered and sharing that. But like there's other approaches for sure. Yeah, drawing hands definitely used to intimidate me for sure, you know, is again, your brain is trying to identify what you're drawing and you're trying to label everything. But just remember, they're just lines, shapes, positive space, negative space, edges. Like hopefully you'll find too that the more you draw, the easier that sort of idea will come to you of breaking things down. And then, you know, too, as you're starting to get your basic shape and lines and edges, and you can decide, again, how much detail you want to include. The more detail, the more information that you render from here to here, the more, of course, realistic it's going to look. That's what realism is, right? It's trying to copy this information down on the paper. So it'd be focusing on the texture, on all the different values. So that's, of course, really up to you how much of that you want to include. But then also, you know, when you're rendering or shading your drawing, there's lots of different ways, of course, to shade as well. You could hatch or cross hatch or scumble or even like scribble, or you know, there's lots of different methods depending if you want to be a little bit more expressive or loose with it too. And you can always too, like if the grid method is super helpful for you, you could always like take a photograph of your hand, apply a grid to it, or, you know, sometimes it's nice to divide it into quadrants, or you could use that picture plane viewfinder from the Betty Edwards series, which all those things will help with, you know, proportion or giving yourself units of measurement. There's just no, like, the skill of freehanding with accurate proportions definitely like takes a while to master. I definitely, like, when I'm drawing freehand, do not draw as accurate freehand as when I use a grid. Unless I'm taking time to, like, sight and, you know, actually use, like, an angle finder. But I think, you know, you can use the tools that you find helpful. Then when you're shading, you know, shading can be a complex thing to think about. But really, you can just ask yourself, is it a shadow or is it a highlight? Is it light? Is it dark? Is a shadow being cast, or is light being, you know, shined down and casting a highlight like the top of the thumb? So you can sort of break it down into just two, but then from there, when you look a little bit closer, you can start to get some of the different values. But kind of starting with a light and a dark can simplify it a little bit. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because I'm not quite done with some of these wrinkles. But the other thing I want to mention is before I start shading, I just like to kind of go through too and look at my sketch and just refine the contour and just make sure things are how I want them to be before I start to add any shading. Like, by the time I get to shading, I want my drawing to feel pretty solid and that I'm not looking to make many changes in the outside edges or the contour of it. So I like to just kind of focus on that and take a minute to make sure it's looking how I want, because it's frustrating when you shaded something and you actually decide, you know what, this isn't what I want it to look like, and then you have to erase all that.
See how that mistake plays out, but I can show you exactly what I did. I know it's hard to see if you can make out
Here, I can spotlight you.
Okay, well,
Ooh.
so you can see how, like, the fingers down at the bottom, I'm trying to show the nail and this person holding the, I don't know, the sheet, you know, like
Yeah.
gripping the sheet. And, well, the problem is I got the fingers wrong and I put the nail in first and I took it out. That's why there's all this extra schmutz, like over here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's where the nail was. I'm never going to get back to the original shading on this paper because
Yes.
it's all ruined. The good news is I kind of learned a little bit more about where the fingers are, and if I try this again, which I will, I'll get a better shot. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely right. Shade last or second.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I actually had a student say to me earlier, because I mentioned something that we did, this just painting exercise, exploratory thing, and I told them, you know, we learn what we want to repeat and what we don't want to repeat, right? Like, and I had a student say to me today, she goes, you know what, like, that really, like, resonated with me. She was like, you definitely learn a lot from, like, what you don't want to do again. So yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. And, you know, a lot of that came from my own frustration of having to erase my shading.
Hmm.
It's just nice to, you know, refine everything. And I mean, I definitely, my style is not hyper realistic. I love to see expressive lines. I like to kind of play with edges and backgrounds, and to me, that's the fun creative part, right? Is I can create something that doesn't necessarily exist, and we've kind of talked about some of that before, and mentioning photography and those sorts of things. And drawing hyper realistically, I think, is amazing, and it's a super great skill. I know it takes a lot of time and practice to hone that skill, but to me it's like I like to be loose and expressive, and that feels good. And I think you should find an art style that feels good, that you enjoy. Sometimes there's frustrations because that just comes with learning new skills all the time, but I think for the most part, like, you should be having fun. And I think too, if you're not sure, like, it's okay to not have a quote unquote style, especially when you're just learning how to do something or learning a new skill. Like, that will come with time. But I mean, I can say with each and every one of you, because I've seen multiple pieces you've created, you all do have a little style going on, which I think is really neat. Like, it's almost like our handwriting, right? It's some of that's just within you, but the more you draw, the more you're going to figure things out. And I think it's good to look at other people's art too, and just figure out, okay, what do I like the look of, and ask yourself maybe, like, how did they do that? I like to think about, like, other artists' process. I mean, if I can read about it or watch about it, I think it's really, like, watch a video, and I think that's great. But when you're just looking at artwork, especially like to look at how, like, artists problem solve texture, like real textures, but like through paint or graphite. I think that's really interesting. See, I got quite a few adjustments I'm making before ready to shade here.
Well, Jennifer, kindly excuse me. At someplace I gotta be at 4:30, but I wanted to at least make an appearance. I'll see you
Yeah,
again soon.
Ivan, it was great to see
You
you.
too.
Thanks for coming. Have
Bye,
a great
ladies.
rest of your
Take
evening.
care. Enjoy your artwork.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nails are always interesting too. I always find myself having to kind of come back and relook at the shape of them a little bit. And kind of the curve or the direction. And Cheryl, I haven't responded to your email yet, but I really love the photos that you sent.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing them. Yeah, some needs a little work. How's everyone feeling so far?
Oh, all righty.
Okay.
Muddling through.
Yes.
I always gotta make it so complicated, don't I? I'm actually excited for the crumbled paper one. I don't know if you guys saw that one, but I think that can be really fun to draw crumbled paper. It's fun to play with the value and the
I've
shading.
never tried that.
When is that?
That might be, I forget if it's next week or the week after, but it is this month.
Oh, okay.
Good.
I can even look a minute and tell you. I've got the calendar right here. Be lost without my calendar. It's next week.
Oh,
Crumbled paper next week. Yep.
Wow.
all right.
So be ready.
Wow.
Hmm.
Oh, who do I hear back there?
Yes, he's quite the talker.
That's Hunter.
Yes. He was even howling yesterday.
Oh my
Was
gosh.
he?
It's like, oh my gosh.
So funny.
Doesn't that mean he's happy?
Oh, I'm sure it does. And he'll just talk. I mean, he's
Aww.
really funny.
Cute.
Well, he's probably feeling right at home then, and
Oh
has
yeah,
lots to
he's
say.
taken over the place.
It's like, this is my house now.
Oh yeah, he's definitely the boss.
Well, he has a whole new backyard, right?
Yes, he does. And he likes to drive by, well, running by some of the new plants and then he tries to grab them.
Oh no.
Okay, my hand's asleep. I have to stop.
Yeah, you better stop then.
That's too funny.
Yeah, that is true. I got a little tingly feeling in mine for sure. Like,
Yeah.
and there should have been a disclaimer on this one. So you could have used pictures too. I mean,
Oh,
I think, there's benefits to both drawing from life and pictures for
Right.
sure.
I like it.
Well, good.
It will wake up.
That's true. We'll be back. Yeah, painting hands can be fun too. All right, I think I'm going to start blocking in some value. And, a value too, when you're starting to shade, it's one of those things where you can fully render one area and complete it and then move on. Or you could sort of work by blocking in your dark values to medium values and then sort of finishing with highlights. Again, I think that's some of that is just going to come down to personal preference and how you enjoy working. But I like to just sort of hop around and block in all those dark values. Again, I'm a little impatient too. Like, I like to be moving in the artwork.
Try not to make my hand look hairy.
Yeah, that'd be a good goal, right? And of course, when you're shading, you can have it blended. Cross hatching in multiple directions lightly over top will create a nice blend. But you could also leave it a little bit looser, more expressive, or you could use a paper stump and you could blend with a paper stump, which can be kind of nice. And just keep in mind too, like your edges. In real life, we're not outlined. So when we have a drawing that's outlined, we want to consider what to do with our edges. The value will either blend into the actual drawing itself, like the hand, or into the background. Unless you want to see lines and edges outlined because that's the particular style you're working in. Definitely notice like my hand is like slowly moved. I haven't been, have you guys been having that too? I know, it's just the time of day, I think. And sometimes that's why a photo is helpful and sometimes real life, like having both.
Yeah.
in case you get the slight movement. But, all part of the process.
The more I'm working on it, the worse it looks, so I'm stopping.
I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes like that just happens, right? It's just, again, one of those instances of sometimes you learn from something that you don't end up loving the finished result, and
Yeah.
it was just to experiment, if you will, or exploration. I mean, that's good. I think we're not encouraged to like play enough as adults, I don't think, right? And like try things without this fear of, well, what's the final product? Or what if it doesn't look good? So I think, it's like I get drawings too. I'll plenty of the time that I'm just like, this is my favorite thing, or I wish I would have done this differently, and I've learned something from it. It's my pinky mainly that like really moved. And as you're drawing too, and shading, and you're constantly gonna notice little things that you could maybe want to change, or make a little different. And too, I always remember, it's like we're the most critical of our own work too.
Oh yeah.
That's true.
Kind of a little rainy here today. Kind of
Yeah.
overcast.
We had some overcast, but then it went away.
Yeah, sun now.
Yep. The
Nice.
usual.
That's great.
Now I should show my hand going after that cookie I want so bad.
That would be kind of fun, right? Or like a hand holding something.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be real good.
Yeah, especially the cookie.
Do you have a favorite kind of cookie, Cheryl?
Yes, my sister sent me 5 dozen of them. They're in the freezer. I'm trying not to eat them. They're called clothespin cookies.
Oh, what is
They're
that?
What is that?
they're a Croatian cookie. They look like a little not an eclair, a cream horn, about
Okay.
the size of your little finger, a little smaller.
Okay.
And it's a thin dough. And the reason they're called clothespin cookies was because in the old days they wrapped the dough around clothespins and baked
Oh.
them. So it's like an empty shell, and then you can fill it with whipped cream, or we like to put what's it called? It's icing, buttercream icing.
Mm.
Ooh.
And you make them, different colors, like pinks and blues and greens, real light.
Oh,
Yeah. And they just melt in your mouth because you're like a phyllo dough, a very thin dough. And you
okay.
put it in your mouth and it disappears, but it ends up on your hips.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I shared my cookies though with my 2 daughters and my husband,
Aw, that's
my
nice.
sister-in-law. So my
Carol,
sister
that's
said
what you
to
should
me,
draw. You should draw one of those cookies.
yes,
Yeah.
I
It
should.
looks like a finger.
Reaching for it. Yeah.
You'll make us all jealous.
And she sent what we call buckeyes. I don't know if you've ever heard of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look like a deer's eye. That's why they're called
Okay.
buckeyes.
Oh, yeah.
They look like buckeyes from a buckeye tree. Do you know what a buckeye is?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
So
live
you make
like
those out of a peanut butter. You roll balls of peanut butter with what's it called?
Chocolate.
With powdered sugar, and then you dip them in chocolate, except you let a little round circle on top be there so it looks like an eye.
Oh,
The
okay.
peanut butter.
Those
Yeah.
are delicious too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could get into trouble with those, it sounds like.
And she didn't get them made for Easter, but she's still cooking. She's a baker, and she's making kolache.
Oh, I know what those are.
Well, it depends on what part of the country and who brought, it to that
Yeah.
part of the country. Ours is a long loaf of sweetbread,
Uh-huh.
and you roll it out flat, and you fill it with, you could fill it with a nut mix, a jam, and then you roll it so that it looks like a pinwheel when you cut it. Now in Texas and over in Kansas and that part, they're like little tiny things that have meat in them.
Oh.
That's what they call a kolache. So I don't know where that's from.
I'm from Pennsylvania, and my grandma was
What part of
And-
Pennsylvania?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, did you? I used to go
And
shopping
we
there.
have the better cookie tables than you.
I don't know. Our weddings have 3 cookie
Yes.
tables, right?
Yes, yes.
Wow. I had to
Oh,
That
yeah.
was an
Big
important
thing.
aspect of a wedding, to have the cookie tables.
Yes,
Really?
absolutely. Yeah. And all the aunts and grandmothers would bake for
Yep.
weeks before the wedding.
Right.
Really? Wow.
Because
That's
you're
cool.
supposed to take like 3 dozen home with you, every guest.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I'll send you a picture of one of the cookie tables that I have.
Okay.
Yeah, they can be so beautiful. Right, Nora?
Absolutely.
Mm.
That's so cool. Well, I totally learned something new.
Yeah, me too.
I have a neighbor whose nephew or niece got married in Montana this year during COVID, believe
Yeah.
it or not. And she's Italian, so they have these wedding cookie tables. Her mother and aunts made cookies, tons of cookies, individually wrapped them in saran wrapped, and shipped them to Montana so they'd
Yeah.
have the cookie table, because you can't
Yeah.
have a wedding without cookie tables.
Well, my
Oh.
sister sent my cookies from Ohio. She froze them all and sent them up UPS.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's too funny.
Yeah. And I got all those cookies, and I said to my 2 daughters, I said, okay, we have enough for a cookie table. I said, who's getting married? No one.
So Cheryl, my grandma used to make these Slovak cookies called charegis.
Oh,
I don't
I've
know if
never
you
heard of that.
remember those. They're like strips of dough, but they're curly Q, and she tied them in a bow,
yes.
fried them, and then put powder sugar on them.
Oh, they're so good. I forget. We call them a different name.
You probably call them
Quandy.
something else. Huh?
Quandies.
Quandies.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
And everything was made with Crisco.
Oh, yeah.
There you have it.
Absolutely.
Apparently, I've
Crisco
never
or
had a real
Spry,
cookie.
S-P-R-Y.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I remember that. Spry.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Making me
so
hungry.
if there's a graduation or a shower, they'll do cookie tables too, but not like at a wedding. Oh,
The wedding is the main event. Like
The
Yeah.
main
big one.
event.
Okay. Wow, that's so interesting.
And you provide take-home containers so that they can take them
Yes.
home with them.
yes. Mhm. They're more important than the cake.
Now, would you also
Absolutely.
have like a wedding favor? Would
Oh,
that be a
yeah.
thing? Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And my grandmother used to make these things called crybabies.
What
Oh,
were
what are
those?
those?
What is that?
They were just like a sugar cookie with a lid on it, but you put a little hole, and inside you have cooked raisins. And when you bake
Ooh.
it, the raisins weep. So that's why she called them crybabies.
Oh,
Oh,
That's cool.
my husband would like those. He likes
Mhm.
raisins.
Me too. Oatmeal raisin cookies. That's my next favorite.
Really?
I'm getting hungry, and this is awful. I go for blood work in 2 days.
No sugar for you.
Ugh.
That's the hardest, right? When you know you can't.
Yes.
absolutely.
Much we're learning today
Mm.
about
Yes,
cookies.
awesome. That's so cool. And a connection was made, right? Like that's neat.
Right.
Yeah. Do you still live in Pittsburgh?
No, I'm in Arizona now, but I do have a
Oh.
lot of family that are there. My brother's back there.
Uh-huh. We used to like to go up and ride the incline.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the Duquesne.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
We went when we was awful. We were young, and we drove up there. I forget. We had been out dancing all night in Youngstown, and then we got in the car and we said, "Let's go up to Pittsburgh." So we went, and we all sat in the car going up the incline.
Uh-huh.
And well, we hid, and there was a lookout. And when the other car was coming down with the people going to work in the morning, and as soon as that car was right next to us, we got a signal and everybody jumped up.
Oh geez.
So silly. But it was fun, and then we went home.
Oh my gosh, you went all that way.
Just an hour.
That's not too bad.
No. We had been out, had breakfast, you know.
Pretty view from up on top of the mountain there, overlooking the
isn't it?
rivers and the lights
Oh, it's gorgeous.
and the football stadium.
Yeah. Oh boy, traffic jam. We went there a few years back, about 4 years ago, to the casino, and there was a game that night. The
Oh
traffic
boy.
was horrendous. I mean, right in
Oh.
town they have the baseball field, the football field, and this casino.
Oh wow. Okay.
All in
Yeah.
the same area.
Yeah.
Yeah, traffic is my least favorite thing, and the older I get, the less I like it even more. It's like if I can avoid it and driving in it when I go places, I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah.
what's the parking situation? Do I
Yeah.
Oh,
you
Really?
know, I hate hunting for it and kind play with the shading I have.
Oh my gosh.
Someone's talking to us.
Yep.
Tell us all about it. And I just get to a point where I'm like, I'm just not gonna look at my hand at all. And just well, I'm working on getting some guest artists to come teach some classes
Oh,
Huh?
how fun.
because I just think it's so fun to see different things from different people, and so I'll get some live guest artists to come on
Mm.
and share. And
I have to tell you about my abstract expressionism painting class yesterday.
oh, please do.
It was in person here at where we live.
Yeah.
And the instructor bought 6 gallons of latex paint,
Oh,
spread it all on a table, and then we filled our little plastic cups with paint. And
Yeah.
then he taught us about Jackson Pollock.
yeah.
And then his wife, Lee Krasner, who I didn't know was a more famous painting than Jackson.
No.
So he gave
I
us a
didn't
little
know
bit art history on them, and then we had to paint in his style and in her style. And oh, it
Cool.
was so much fun. We
That's
got
great.
knitting needles, Jennifer. We got knitting needles. We dipped them in our plastic glasses of paint and dribbled it over the canvas like this, or
cool.
Wow.
all over till you fill as much as the canvas you want with at
Yeah.
least three colors.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun.
Huh.
That sounds
I bet.
awesome.
Huh?
And then his wife painted like in squares. So we
Mhm.
had a foam brush and we went through squares all over the place, but in different analogous tones
Yeah.
or complementary tones only, using 3 colors. Oh, it was so much fun.
That's awesome. It's awesome you were good to go back in person too.
Yes. Lee, you would have liked it. He's going to do it again next fall
Uh-huh.
with different abstract artists as the focal point. So I think it'll be very popular.
Yeah.
Bet.
It was very, very interactive.
Sounds like it.
He demoed it first, which is unusual for him, but he demoed it first, and then
That's
we got
true.
to see the technique of using the knitting needles.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
It was.
Yes.
It'd be cool. We could do a class, like a painting class, where you can't use any paintbrushes. Yeah. Like you have to create a painting with all something else. I like
Wow.
that. Like knitting needles, like you said, or yeah, it could be fun. Could be fun challenge.
Yeah.